So in this video, I'm going to show you how I installed this hardwood floor. There should be carpet here, so I'll show it kind of pulling up the carpet. This is 5/8 inch wide, 3/4 inch real hardwood. I put an underlayment in there. You don't normally need to do that, but I just kind of, it's upstairs and there's kids playing. So try to just quiet it a little bit. So I'll go through cutting it, kind of my tips for, how to keep everything straight, how to line it up at the beginning, because that's the most important part is planning, just like you do in tile. We plan here, so when I end up here, I don't have a small tiny gap over here. Trying to get the lines so they alternate randomly, and then also keeping straight lines and then tight together.
So we have to start off with demolition, so cleaning it, get out anything that's in the way, like I get this door, getting rid of the existing material. So I have carpet here. I'm going to be cutting that and pulling it out. I'm not going to show much of it. I could put it in a separate video, but you're going to have to just kind of cut the carpet, get the underlayment out. There's the tacking strips usually under carpet, so you're going to have to pull those out as well. You want this completely clear, completely clean, because the hardwood's going to lay flat against the subfloor, or if you have some underlayment, anything like that. So you see I'm just pulling the carpet out, rolling it up, getting the foam, as I mentioned, out of here, and then just getting there's the tacking strips. So getting those out. Any nails, this is always hard with the foam, and these that's down the underlayment there because they're stapled down. So that's why I'm pulling these out. Sometimes it usually helps to have these are like magnetic dish holders from automotive. I usually find that's good because I can clear it out and then just kind of run it over the top and get anything. This is usually a lot of the work, but this is the prep that really helps. So again, sometimes, especially when you're taking the foam out, there's always little leftovers ones. So you might take a couple trips. So do that, clean it all up so that there's nothing underneath, because you don't want the hardwood laying not flat. And then you want to prepare the subfloor. So that means I'm kind of going around looking for any bumps that are sticking out, looking if it's uneven, any loose spots. I'm kind of stepping around just to see if I get some squeaks. It's usually loose nails that causes squeaks. And then what I'm going to do is lay down. I'm going to put some screws down. So I'm looking for the studs underneath, or just kind of line it up so it's easier to do, because that's what I'm just going to do is drop some screws, make sure nothing's squeaking. I got some loose nails here, so that's possibly what's causing squeaks, because any loose nails, they'll move as you step on them, because the floor is still going to move a little bit. So I'm pulling those out, I said, and then I'm just going to re-drive in screws just to make, especially around the joints, make sure everything is tight, and so it's not moving around, because once you put the hardwood floor down, you're not going to be able to fix it. And I'm just doing a rough measurements here just to see how square the room is, because there's usually a problem there, and you just kind of adjust for it. And then look for straight lines on the walls as well. This thing's bowed out right here, and so I like to put in these. So I got 16th on this side, or sorry, 3/16 and 1/16. You can kind of put those. They should be a 1/4 inch gap. This is bowed out, so I'm trying to kind of straighten it up here and lay it out just to see, just make sure I have it right, and just kind of get an idea. If I'm going to end up with like a 1 inch over there or something really small, I don't want that. So I would then, possibly rip some off of this side so I could make it smaller on this side, so you don't end up with a small. Sometimes it doesn't really matter that much, but I usually like to kind of measure out a couple of them and then just get a good idea. This is pretty close. It's within 32nd of an inch, so I'm pretty good there. So it's double checking and make sure I'm square. I'm not kind of going off of an angle, getting something different. I'm right at 83, so I think I got that pretty good. So it's always hard. The first piece is always the hardest to start off with. So I like to use, if you notice, I got one of the longer pieces here, so I'll probably do all the long pieces just to make it a lot easier. Because if you get small pieces, then you're going to end up, they may not be perfectly parallel to each other. And you're going to be off a little bit, and you'll have like weird gaps because, it'll be like this, and this one will be straight across them, and they're weird. So it's nice to have the longest pieces and just double check them, obviously, with your actual level. Make sure they are square. And one thing I like to do is go through the boards before I just start laying them down. Just double check, so you can see this one actually has a hole in it from looks like a worm or something like that. But it's obvious it's dead by now. But I just like to mark these so I don't throw them away, and because there's just sometimes hidden areas where I like to put them down. So I'm going to do the underlayment here. You can see I'm really enthralled by the instructions, just kind of toss them out. You don't have to do this, but I'm going to do it just because it's an upper floor and just want to kind of soften it. If you need it for moisture control, anything like that, you put that down first. Otherwise, you can put down, felt, some type of paper, anything. Again, it's not required, but I usually like to just do a good job. So it's not really that much more effort and not that much more expense, and just something that might make it a little bit nicer. So I'm cutting around the edges into the closet here. Is not really. You don't have to get it perfect because it doesn't have to be right up against the edge, but just kind of showing you this is what the tongue and groove looks like. And you'll be using these cleats. They go in right at the tongue part, and they'll go in at an angle so that they'll be hidden. They'll be set flush in there, see, below the level, so that the tongue and groove still works, but it has enough go into the floor. And then so then the groove will go right back over the tongue and not be obstructed. You've probably seen this before, but this is the nail gun that goes in. So you'll see it comes in at a 45-degree angle. When you hit it, it goes through that tongue, and that cleat sets in there. So they'll just sit in like this, and this is how they go through, and they have some grooves on them.
You want to be able to get square and it's parallel to the other side of the room. It's almost never completely parallel, but if you kind of fudge it this way to help fudge it that way a little bit, then you can get the square so that as you end up there, you don't end up with weird shapes or anything like that. I can see I've actually got one of the longest pieces I could find here. I think it was like almost 6 feet long, so that's good. And then I got another piece here, which is pretty long, which is going to be enough. And I'm going to use the first I double check these to make sure they are square themselves here, and then I kind of looked at the wall according to the trim here, and it kind of bows in and out, which kind of expected. So what it get with have a long line, you can kind of even out those pieces. And what I've done here is I put some tape up here. I know I need 1/4 of an inch off of this, and so I have that. What I did was line that up here, and then I worked out that it kind of bowed out here, and then I got my other piece here where it's going to be a 1/4 inch gap here. Again, I kind of have to work with what I got here. This to the gap that I need on that side, and then cut this, and then I'll have two pieces, and I can have one long piece here. And I'm going to start it off square so that it work here. I like to get them tight, and then just double check that distance, because sometimes it might look like it's, for example, these are 5 inches, might be off by a little bit. Then you make your measurement, and then by the time you get there, you're kind of off. So I like to take a couple of them and just verify. This is really good. This is right at 15. So that I would measure from this distance. It's pretty easy because it's in multiples of 5. This is 83. Just prepare beforehand. Just kind of measure so that when you get there, you don't end up with a surprise and then trying to figure it out on the last row or the last couple of rows. So I'm going to set my gap that I want on this side here, and then don't make the mistake of saying, "Oh, I need to cut off this part here," because that's not what you want. You want to cut that side off. So I want to line this up. So the easiest way is to just turn it upside down. A little tongue that sticks out here. Don't measure off of that because that's not your true thickness here. This really doesn't have to be perfect because you're gonna have usually do about like 1/4 of an inch gap around here, and then your trim is over like 1/2 inch. So most of the time it's not that important. Line this up. We'll check there. All right, so now when I cut this side off, and it goes over my tongue here is intact, and this is the part that's cut off.
So I'm doing a quick cut here I like to run a thin cut across the top, get a nice smooth finish before I go through the whole thing, try to avoid any tear out. You really need a miter saw for this. It's a lot. You can do it with a hand saw, but it makes the job a lot easier.
Okay, so I got the cut was correct. Got these lined up here. You want to make sure that, again, it's going to be flush here, and then also this continuation right here. You don't want to measure on the tongue. That's not what's going to be showing. And then I want to make sure that I'm square along the line here, that these two pieces again aren't kind of crooked. So you have one problem when you start off with this. I showed you where this is going to go in the tongue right here. But the problem is this thing hits the wall before you have a chance. So it usually takes a couple, depending on how thick it is. I think this one I'll be able to start doing it on the second row. Yeah, then I got enough clearance. Face nail it with a finishing nailer. So I'm going to go along and do that, and then kind of simulate the same thing where I'm going to go into the tongue here and shoot down angle just to start off that first row, just to get it secured before you can start using the reel. That's good to start off. Don't get it too close to the edge here because you don't want to crack it. So I'm going to slowly work back this way here. Just double check. This is depending what material you're using. So this is 3/4 inch hardwood, full oak. That's pretty thick, so I've got it turned up pretty good. It's already nailed this first one here, so I'm just going to work my way down. You can see there's a little bit of flex in it. That's expected, so that's what you're trying to get rid of here. You want to make sure you're going through and not exposed. It's not exposed on the underneath of the tongue there, otherwise the board won't go in. So you can see already this is not moving at all. All right, so that was good. Let's start working on the other board here. So if you're wondering about these holes here, these are going to be filled in with the color match putty. They sell wood putty that's getting close, so you can go that. Most of it's going to be covered over by that first layer of trim. So I'm just going to finish this first row so we get a nice solid parallel line to go this way. So I've got the boxes I need here, and so don't make the mistake of just pulling from one box and doing one at a time. Most of the time you're okay, but depending on where it was made, when it was made, inventory, pull and alternate where I pull them from, so I can alternate the sizes and also potentially the colors. And also gives you a chance to look through the boards to kind of get an idea. I got a lot of small ones here, depending on the quality that you buy. Sometimes you'll just end up with boxes of just tons of small ones, and it makes for a long day. But you also want to kind of go through and look at, this one's got a pretty big knot here. Doesn't mean I don't want to use it, but I may just put it like kind of in a corner or somewhere it's not going to be visible. But just it's good to put the effort in the beginning or as you work, instead of trying to fix errors later on. You kind of just think about where room is, where the bed's going to fit, where certain things are. There's going to be areas that are going to be covered up once everything's moved in, and there's no use using nice boards for that. So just kind of all these thoughts thinking out there. But in the open area where you come in, that's always going to be visible. So I'll probably use a lot of nice boards right there. Just kind of, again, just trying to work the best you can, just thinking about long term.
So I'm working on the second row here. You really want to use a rubber mallet or anything like that. You don't want to damage that tongue. I'll show you a little bit later where I just kind of use a rough piece. So here's, I can see it's a little bit bowed, so I'm just kind of trying to tuck it in. Sometimes that friction will kind of hold together as you just tap it in. You want to get the spacing correctly before you start going with the gun. So here it is. You're just lay it down, get it flat, just a quick tap on it. And then I like to make sure it's square, it's solid before I start just running other ones. One thing I forgot to do was I wanted to lay a line down for where the studs are underneath, just because I want to go, as I'm going with the gun, just make sure I'm hitting those, just add a little extra. So you have to space them out. I think the manufacturer is about 8 inches. I know my studs are at 16 inches, so I found it easier just to hit the stud and then go back in between each one of them. That's how I got mine laid out. But as you move down, you want to make sure you're not just assuming it's flush just because the first was at the corner. I got some tips a little bit later, tips and tricks, just to kind of show you what I look at. But you just run down. This one, it's pretty easy, and you'll see it starts getting repetitive pretty quickly here after you're just putting those cleats in over and over for every board. So once I got that laid in, I want to put the next one and make sure you're not hitting the board or the edge of the other one. So you want to get an overlay, and then make sure every couple of rows or every row, however you want to do it, make sure you get a nice straight line across that transition from one board to the next. Because once you get a problem, then it just keeps getting worse and worse, and you're going to have to fix it. So just take care of it as soon as you can. Here I got this obstruction on the wall. You might have something like that. So I had to take that out just so I could get in there, because I didn't want to toenail or face nail. So the first thing I like to do is, as I start laying out, is start
laying some down just to kind of get an idea of some not overlapping the gaps instead of trying to nail it, go back to the pile, nail it, go back to the pile, just lay out a couple rows. So I was about to do that, and then I realized I'm already hitting this the closet over here. So I have to start working on that, because what you want to do is, obviously you don't want the lines to be off, because once you meet out here, then the lines are going to be flowing through the whole room. So what I'm going to do is try to match up the lines here so that you start building from the wall, but work my way backwards here, but I still have to nail it correctly. So I'm going to have to cut this off and not cut it completely off, or else I end up with a seam there. But I want to cut a little L shape here. This piece to be the same as this, lined up this same way, continue that same line. So I want that to continue. So first I'm going to have to cut this to length, but I can't know until I run this out. You can get that whole line to understand that one. Dry fit it like this, and then dry fit these all up against there, so they have the right line. It's up the distance, obviously not this far. We're just simulating here, and then pull them tight together. Face nail this so that I have it off. Pull this one off, then nail it correctly, and then when I build in up to it, I'll end up with the right line. What I've done is cut these two pieces. Actually, put all three of these pieces so that's the right size. So they're not nailed together. They're only, I pushed them tight together and then taped them with some blue tape just to hold them tight, just to kind of, again, dry fit it. And now I'm going to put it in, and then make sure my straight continuous line. If you notice this little piece right here, this is one where I had a dent under, or a ding, and so I marked it. So it was a good place to remember. I can put that somewhere where it will never be seen. So now these should all line up. So I'm going to face nail this one in. Now I can take this off. I can take all these pieces off. Dry fit it in here, because now this one's where I want it to be. I had that starter row, so now I know my row is correct here, and I'm going to toenail it like I did previous. All right, so now that one's set, and now I can start working and work my way out. This one's already set in place. So I'll put these back in here and start nailing them like normal.
And here's just a kind of quick time lapse just showing what it takes. You see I have a whole row laid out there, so I'm just working so I can just take that, and also I can get a good view of where my gaps are, so I'm not being repetitive, and try to be as random as possible with the length of the different bores. I've completed right across to the closet there, so now I have all straight lines I can continue.
So here are my tips for installing hardwood and getting a good, nice, consistent line so that you're going the whole time. One of the easy ones is be careful tapping on, especially the tongue. You dent that, and then it just makes it harder. So I like to use some of these cut off pieces. They obviously fit in there perfectly, and then you can hit it and damage it however you want. It's fine. I'm just installing this piece, and so I usually like to, I'm going this way, I usually like to tap it in here and then kind of move my way down and tap it in. Then I get to the end, make sure it's flush up against this way, and then don't assume that after all that tapping that you still have a nice line here. So I usually like to go back and first and take that, and sometimes what you'll see is it'll be bent or bowed out this direction. If it's like this, you can kind of flatten it. Usually what's easy, if it's bowed up, it's actually put all your weight on it and then hit it, and then you can get enough of that, the weight on it and the friction to push it in that way and to force them in. For the edges that I'm starting off, so I use my tapping block, like my tapping block here, and then get this edge nice, and so there's no gap, because sometimes you might tap that one and this one's out, and then you got a big gap here, and then you have a gap and you're trying to fix it. So get that first, and then if it's bowed out, nail it in here, and then bend the other one in. So I like standing on this because sometimes I get it crooked, or I actually head it up like this, and then you can feel it. So start flat, and then you can feel it, hold it up tight, give it a good hit. So now it's in there flush. So this side is tight. And then you can go, if this is bowed out, you can then go over this one, get this tapped in, and the same thing applies. If it's really bowed out and like you tap it and then you let it go and it comes back out, you can actually put your weight on it, step it with 2 hands, get on there, or sorry, 2 feet, get your full weight on there, tap it in place, That'll hold it in place with enough friction that you can go in and then nail it. So same thing, get all your weight on it. And one thing you can do is you're tapping, you don't have to hit this very hard. But if you're, again, if it's out a little bit, you can give it an extra hard hit, and that force of pushing it and the cleat going in can give it an extra tuck. There's another tip you should be doing every couple of rows or so. You can put it up on the, don't measure the tongue here, because sometimes that's not exactly straight. You want the edge here that's going to reveal that you want to go. Now I got a perfectly straight line that's all the way down there. Get a big level, like just like at least a 6 foot one, so you takes out those little variances of the smaller pieces. Finish it. So that's how I kind of work on any type of boat. If it's too much, don't fight with it. You usually have extra wood. So, but if most of them, they're not going to be perfect, you want to work them into a little bit.
Hopefully this doesn't happen to you, but I had a misfire here. I'm not sure why. Probably hit a nail underneath. Just stop right there, and you can't really pull these things out because they've got grooves on them and they just bend. So I found the easiest way was to just get a oscillating saw and just cut it off. Watch out, it's hot probably. So just knock that off and just put a new one in there. And then the first thing you're going to start seeing as you start hitting obstructions in the same ways with the starting is you can't get the gun in there. And so what you're going to have to do is toenail it like you did on that first row. You might have to face nail it if you can't get it good. This is a small piece and I can kind of get in there successfully, so it wasn't too bad. I could toenail it right there into the top part of the tongue. And then the same thing, kind of a prequel, so you'll see, a preview where you end up against a wall and you can't do it. And I can't even get the gun in here at a 45 degree to toenail it, so I'm just having to face nail. And it's in the closet, so it's not that big of a deal. So, but you're gonna have to do that on the first wall. And then as I get closer to the wall there within the closet, I'm gonna have to rip the end just because it's too big, that the last piece. So this, again, kind of a preview of what you're gonna do when you run into the wall as you're starting to finish the real room. So here's my ripped pieces. I got them in there, got them against the wall. It's a pretty big gap because I haven't put the baseboard in there yet, but if you're curious about that, but that's what I'm doing. I'm putting those ripped pieces in there and then face nailing them against that, but that'll be covered over by that corner round trim later on. And here's the same issue where I'm running into the wall is in the way, so I'm going to have to just start toenailing it in like I did with the first row. So you want to get it in solid. So I think I was doing like every 4 inches or so. It may be too much, but I just wanted to make sure it's solid, especially right here at the entrance, because that's where everybody's going to be walking. And so again, I'm just kind of laying out, keeping preview of I'm going to have to rip that, but I just want to get my pieces in there. And so they sell a bar that's specifically for this. I couldn't find mine, so it was good enough. These pieces fit in pretty good. I was able to tap them like that. And they said you can't really get it because the wall's in the way, but you're going to have to kind of pull them tight. And then here's what you want to always do instead of trying to cut it around the molding is the best way is just take that piece, flip it over, and then you should use an oscillating saw or some kind of back saw and just cut the molding. And then so that allow the wood to actually slide under there and give it a much nicer appearance. So you can see it can slide under there. I didn't have to cut it out. I was able to make it look nice. And you might have to trim. So I'm trimming the other part of the molding here so that the whole piece will fit underneath there. And it gets a little bit, you can see a couple cuts I had to make in there because it's going to have to fit in there, fit down, and then slide underneath that. So it's just a little bit of work, but it makes it look so much better, a lot more professional than having to like caulk it. So you can see here's the piece there. It looks much better because it's slid underneath there. And so here's just another view of that piece slid it in, and then the other side has to slide forward. So I have get a little bit of work there. But again, it makes it look a lot better here. So this is going to be covered over by a transition strip. So I'm trying to be delicate with it and not mar it up, but it's going to be covered over. And this is why I'll show you why you don't nail such right next to the edge. Bam, blasted it, broke it. Luckily, it's going to be covered by the transition strip. Yeah, I'm happy with myself, so I can fix that and just glue it. But the other thing is be careful when you're pressing, especially in a real conspicuous spot like this. You can see it slide right across, scratched it up again. Got to there, I got the whole way through the project and then make 2 mistakes right there in a visible spot. And then here's how you finish up the last row, just kind of like I did in the closet. I'm gonna have to rip it to the thickness. You can see it's not too bad because I pre-measured and everything. I got it where it's only about like 3 inches or so. And so you might have to use, again, like a pull bar, a crowbar, or something like that, just to kind of pull the pieces together. Of course, I'm on the last piece of wood, and the nails run out, and it jammed when I only have a couple of nails left. But that's how these projects always go. So again, just finish up that last row. You're gonna face nail it, but they'll be covered up.